A spoiled heiress was forced to marry a humble farmer. She hated every second of it, until a fire broke out, and what she did next left the entire town speechless. But that was just the beginning. If this story already has you on edge, you don't want to miss what happens next. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and share this video with someone who believes in second chances. Because sometimes, love doesn't come from luxury. It grows from the dirt. The elevator doors opened to the 43rd floor, and Charlotte Bennett strutted into her father's office as if she owned the building. "Let me guess," she said, without looking up from her phone. "Another PR meeting? Or are we redesigning the wine label again?" Gregory Bennett, CEO of Bennett Global, and worth $800 million on a slow day, sat behind his glass desk. He didn't smile, didn't blink, just waited. "Sit down." Charlotte raised an eyebrow, but obeyed, crossing one leg over the other with perfect posture. "I've got a fitting at 3, so if this is about my spending—" "It's not," Gregory interrupted flatly. "It's about your future and your inheritance." She looked up, interested for the first time. "You'll get everything," he continued. "The trust, the properties, the shares. All of it, if you agree to one condition." Charlotte smirked. "What? Give up shopping for a month? Volunteer somewhere for the gram?" "No," he said sharply. "You'll get married." Silence. She blinked, then laughed out loud. "Excuse me? Married? That's your idea of a lesson?" He didn't flinch. "I've chosen someone. You'll marry him by the end of the week." Her face dropped. "Who is it? A Harvard MBA? A senator's son? Someone from the board?" Gregory leaned forward, voice even. "No. A farmer. In Tennessee. His name is Ethan Walker." The room went still. Charlotte stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "A farmer?" Gregory nodded once. "He runs a small operation in Pine Hill. Honest, hardworking. The opposite of everything you've become." She scoffed. "You want me to marry some mud-covered man who thinks deodorant is optional?" "If you want $50 million, yes." Charlotte stood up. "You're insane." He met her gaze, without blinking. "I'm a father who's tired of watching his daughter waste her life in private jets and hotel bars." "So you're shipping me off like cattle?" she snapped. Gregory folded his hands. "Call it a reality check." "This is abuse," she hissed. "No," he said coldly. "It's a choice. You can walk out right now with your Chanel bag and nothing else. Or you can spend a year on Ethan Walker's farm and earn back everything." Her jaw clenched. "This is blackmail." "It's an opportunity." Charlotte grabbed her phone, stormed toward the door, then turned. "Fine, I'll do it. But don't expect me to milk cows and bake pies." Gregory just said, "1 year. That's all I ask." The next morning, the black SUV pulled up to the Bennett estate one last time. But this time, it wasn't to pick Charlotte up. It was to deliver Ethan Walker. He stepped out, tall and steady, wearing faded jeans, a plain t-shirt, and mud-stained work boots that left smudges on the white marble driveway. He didn't flinch at the giant iron gates, the fountains, or the 3-story columns. His eyes scanned the place like it was a museum he didn't care to visit. Charlotte stood at the top of the staircase, watching him like he was some animal that had wandered in from the forest. "Well," she said loudly, arms crossed, "look what the tractor dragged in." Ethan didn't respond. He walked up the steps slowly, stopping just a few feet from her. She gave him a tight smile. "I hope you're not expecting a honeymoon suite." Ethan finally met her eyes, calm but unbothered. "I didn't ask for this, princess, but I'm not letting you walk all over my life either." The tension was immediate. Charlotte blinked. "Excuse me?" "I'm not one of your drivers, or your designer poodles," he said evenly. "You're stepping onto my land. You live by my rules." She scoffed. "This is just temporary. Let's not pretend this is some fairy tale." "Good," he replied, brushing past her. "Because I'm not your prince." The wedding was held that afternoon. No music, no guests. Just a justice of the peace in the Bennett Library, surrounded by oil paintings of dead ancestors and judgmental silence. Charlotte wore a simple white dress she didn't pick. Her lips were pressed in a hard line. Ethan stood beside her, hands in his pockets, emotionless. "Do you take this man?" the officiant began. I guess, Charlotte muttered. And do you take this woman? Ethan glanced at her, then nodded once. Sure. When asked about rings, Ethan said flatly, Don't need 'em. Charlotte didn't argue. After the awkward ceremony, Gregory barely looked at them. The car leaves in 15. Pack light, he said, before walking off. Charlotte changed into boots for the first time in her life, muttering curses the whole way to the car. The silence during the 6-hour drive to Tennessee was deafening. By nightfall, they pulled up to Ethan's farmhouse. There were no gates, no maids, just dirt, wooden fences, and the distant sound of cows. Charlotte stepped out, heels sinking into the mud. You've got to be kidding me. Ethan tossed her suitcase beside her. Welcome home. She turned, fire in her voice. Don't call this home. It never will be. Ethan met her stare. We'll see. That night, Charlotte sat on a creaky bed in a room smaller than her Manhattan closet, staring at the cracked ceiling. No Wi-Fi, no air conditioning, no room service, just her, and him, and a contract she now deeply regretted signing. But this was only the beginning. The sun hadn't even touched the sky when Charlotte's door slammed open. Wake up! Ethan's voice cut through the silence like an alarm clock from hell. It's 5:30. The cows don't care you're tired. Charlotte groaned, burying her head under the blanket. Are you serious? It's still dark. Ethan didn't move. You're on a farm now. This is normal. She peeked out with bloodshot eyes. Normal is brunch at 11, with mimosas. Brunch won't feed the animals, he said, turning on the light. Charlotte hissed like a vampire, shielding her face. You are seriously the worst human being I've ever met. Put on boots. I'll be outside in 5. He shut the door. 10 minutes later, she stumbled out, still wearing pajama pants, tucked into mismatched rain boots and a hoodie that said, I woke up like this. Irony fully intact. Ethan handed her a shovel and pointed toward the barn. Charlotte blinked. What do you expect me to do with this? Clean the stalls. You mean animal poop? He nodded. That's exactly what I mean. Charlotte laughed, not a soft giggle, a full-blown, unhinged laugh. You think I'm going to scoop cow crap because Daddy cut off my trust fund? You've lost it. Ethan didn't blink. The door's right there. You can go back to New York, empty-handed. Or you stay. And you pull your weight. He turned and walked away. Charlotte stood frozen, shovel in hand, rage bubbling beneath her skin. She entered the barn like it was a war zone. The smell hit her first. Thick, raw, unforgiving. A cow mooed as if mocking her. She took one hesitant step, trying not to step in anything disgusting, and failed immediately. Her boot sank into something wet and squishy. Oh my God, she gasped, dry heaving. The next hour was a disaster. She spilled the first bucket of feed, dropped the second, got chased by a goat, then slipped on hay and landed flat on her back in front of a cow that looked mildly entertained. By the time she reached the chicken coop, her hair was a mess, her hoodie was stained, and her patience was non-existent. She opened the coop door. Chickens swarmed her like an ambush. One pecked her thigh. She screamed, Ah, that thing bit me. They don't bite, Ethan said calmly, from across the fence, arms crossed. Charlotte turned. Then what the hell was that? Just saying. Chickens peck. They don't bite. She glared at him, breathing hard, eyes wild. You're enjoying this. Not really, he replied, but I warned you. This isn't the Four Seasons. Back in the barn, Charlotte was trying to milk a cow. The bucket tipped. Milk splashed all over her jeans. She shrieked, I can't do this. Ethan appeared again, leaning against a post. You done? She stood, fists clenched. I'm not made for this. Maybe you're not made for much. That hit like a slap. Charlotte stared at him, stunned. You don't know me. I know enough, he said, walking past her. People who only take never survive long here. Her hands trembled, more from frustration than cold. She grabbed the bucket again, sat down, and this time she didn't quit. By noon, she was covered in dirt, hay in her hair, and her hands raw from the shovel. She collapsed on the porch bench, breathing like she'd run a marathon. Ethan sat on the opposite end, drinking water from a tin cup. Neither spoke, until Charlotte muttered, I hate you. He took a sip. That's fair. She glanced at him. This place? It's like a prison. No, he said, setting the cup down. It's real. That's the problem. You're not used to anything real. She didn't reply, because deep down, she knew he was right. Charlotte's body ached in places she didn't even know had muscles. Every step felt like punishment. Every sunrise reminded her that she wasn't in Manhattan anymore. But something changed the third week. It started with a noise. She'd been hiding behind the barn with a cup of black coffee she didn't even like. Then she heard a hammer. Repeated, rhythmic, steady. She peeked around the corner. Ethan was on the roof of a small, broken-down house across the field. Martha Ray's house. The elderly widow who waved at Charlotte every morning like they were old friends, even though Charlotte never waved back. No cameras, no reporters. Just Ethan, balancing on an old ladder, patching her roof like it was the most natural thing in the world. She narrowed her eyes. Why was he doing that? Later that day, she saw him again, this time at the tiny clinic down the road. He was handing over 2 giant crates of vegetables. The nurse smiled and hugged him. A little boy peeked out from the doorway, pale and thin, his mom brushing hair from his forehead. The nurse leaned over and said something. Then Ethan nodded and handed her cash, folded bills from his back pocket. Charlotte watched from the car. No one asked, no one begged, he just did it. That night, Charlotte couldn't sleep. She sat outside, hoodie pulled tight, biting her lip. The moon hung low, the crickets sang, and across the sky, the stars blinked in a silence she had never truly heard before. Then she saw Martha slowly walking toward the fence. Couldn't sleep either? Martha smiled warmly. Charlotte shrugged. Too quiet. That's when the truth shows up, Martha said, settling beside her on the bench. They sat for a moment. Then Martha pointed toward Ethan's house in the distance. He's stubborn, she said softly. Hard as that dry soil in August. Charlotte smirked. Tell me about it. But, Martha added, looking at her kindly, his heart's in the right place. Always has been. The next day, Charlotte didn't complain when Ethan handed her the shovel. She still hated the smell, still wore perfume before entering the barn, still rolled her eyes when the chickens pecked her boots. But something inside had shifted. One afternoon, she wandered near the field after chores, just to breathe, to be away from the noise in her head. She didn't expect anything. But then she saw it, the sky, a wide, fiery orange, bleeding into gold, the sun lowering behind the trees, the wind brushing the wheat like fingers over piano keys. She sat down on the edge of the field, alone. For the first time, not checking her phone, not calculating the days until freedom, just sitting. Ethan passed behind her with a sack of feed. He slowed, then stopped. You okay? He asked. Charlotte nodded. It's pretty out here. He didn't say anything, didn't tease, didn't smirk, just sat beside her in silence. For 10 full minutes, they didn't speak, and it wasn't awkward, it was peaceful. That night, Charlotte lay in bed and replayed the moment. She thought about the kid at the clinic, about Martha's house, about how Ethan never bragged, never asked for attention, just did what needed to be done. And for the first time, she didn't feel like a prisoner here. She felt curious. The next morning, she woke up on her own, 5 minutes before Ethan's knock. She still hated dirt, still missed Wi-Fi, still didn't understand why cows had to wake up so early. But she grabbed her boots. No complaints. She was starting to see something out here that terrified her more than the chickens. She was starting to care. It was just past midnight when the shouting started. Charlotte shot up in bed, heart pounding. At first, she thought it was part of a dream, until she heard it again. Fire! Fire! Then came the acrid smell of smoke. She threw off the blanket and ran barefoot to the window. The night sky glowed orange. Flames danced violently from the barn across the field, lighting up the darkness like a nightmare coming alive. Her body moved before her brain could catch up. No shoes, no jacket, just instinct. She bolted out the front door into the freezing night, the wind slicing through her t-shirt. Smoke hit her lungs hard. She coughed, but kept going. The barn was already engulfed. Flames clawed through the roof. Sparks shot into the air. Horses inside neighed in pure terror, slamming against the stall doors. "Ethan!" she screamed. "Ethan, where are you?" She spotted him, racing around the side of the barn, axe in hand, face covered in soot. "We need to get them out," he yelled, coughing hard. Charlotte ran straight to the stalls without hesitating. No makeup, no designer boots, just bare hands and raw urgency. She pulled the first latch. The door was stuck. Smoke thickened. Her eyes stung. She kicked it, hard, once, twice. It flew open and the horse bolted out into the open field. "Go," she shouted, slapping its side. Then another stall. Same fight. Her hands were bleeding now. Ethan smashed a beam with the axe, yelling, "Get the back gate open!" But before she could answer, the unthinkable happened. A heavy wooden beam, already charred, split from the ceiling and crashed down behind him. Ethan went down hard. "No!" Charlotte shrieked, stumbling through the smoke toward him. He was trapped under the beam, groaning, trying to crawl. Charlotte dropped to her knees beside him. "I've got you," she gasped. "You shouldn't be here. Shut up and move." With both hands, she gripped the edge of the beam. Her palms screamed in pain. The wood was hot, burning. But she didn't let go. She screamed and pulled with everything she had. Inches. That's all he needed. Ethan twisted his body and rolled out just as another ember fell behind them. "Come on!" she shouted. Together, coughing and choking, they ran out of the barn just as the roof caved in behind them. The fire roared like thunder. They collapsed a few feet away, both of them heaving for breath. Charlotte's shirt was scorched. Her face was streaked with ash and tears. Her hands were blistered, but her eyes never left him. And for the first time, his didn't leave her either. They sat there, side by side on the cold ground, watching everything burn. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was raw, alive. Ethan finally turned his head, his voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't have to do that." Charlotte looked at him, lips trembling. "Neither did you." He blinked, eyes locked on hers. And for the first time since this entire nightmare began, neither of them said a sarcastic word. Because there was nothing left to prove. No games, just two people, wrecked, shaken, alive. The barn was gone. But something else had survived. Something neither of them expected. Something neither of them could name yet. But they both felt it. Deep, real, undeniable. Part 6. The final choice. 700 words. American English. Fast-paced, emotionally gripping, viral-style storytelling. 3 days after the fire, the ashes were still warm. Ethan was rebuilding the fencing by hand. The barn was gone, but he didn't complain once. Just worked, sleeves rolled up, sweat mixing with soot still stained in the creases of his arms. Charlotte, meanwhile, had been different. Not just on the outside, though the torn denim shirt and the calloused hands were proof enough. But something deeper. She woke early. She helped without being asked. She didn't flinch at mud anymore. And sometimes she even smiled at the chickens. That afternoon, while she was loading supplies into the truck, a sleek black SUV pulled into the driveway. She froze. The door opened, and Gregory Bennett stepped out, tailored coat still spotless despite the dirt road. "Charlotte," he said, adjusting his gold cufflinks, "your little adventure is over." Ethan walked over slowly, brows furrowed. Charlotte stood her ground. Gregory gave Ethan a cold, calculating glance, then turned back to his daughter. "You've had your fun, but enough playing house. Your engagement to Edward Langston is next week." Her jaw clenched. "I'm not marrying Edward," she said flatly. Gregory blinked. "Excuse me?" "I'm not going back." He stepped closer, voice sharper now. "This was a test. You've proven your point. You got dirty. Now come home, take your place, and stop embarrassing the family." And Charlotte crossed her arms. "I'm not embarrassed. For once, I'm proud of myself." Ethan stayed silent, but his eyes flicked between them, tense. Gregory scoffed. "Proud? Of what? Shoveling manure? Sleeping in a shack with a farmer who can't afford a new barn?" Charlotte looked over at Ethan. His face was blank, but she saw his shoulders tense. She turned back to her father. "I found more here than you ever gave me." Gregory's voice dropped. "You give this up. You're cut off. No trust fund, no estate, no shares, nothing." Ethan took a slow step back, like he didn't want to hear her answer, like he was already preparing to lose her. Charlotte glanced at her hands. Scarred, blistered, real. She inhaled deeply. Then cut me off. The silence hit like thunder. Even the wind stopped. Gregory's eyes burned. You would throw away everything? No, she said. I'm choosing something better. She turned, walked over to Ethan, who was frozen, and stood beside him. You once said people who only take don't last out here, she said, voice trembling. Well, I'm staying, not because I have to, but because I want to. Gregory stared at her, and for the first time, he didn't know what to say. He stepped back. You'll regret this. Maybe, Charlotte said, but it'll be my choice. Without another word, he climbed back into the SUV and drove away. Dust settled. Ethan looked at her. You didn't have to do that. Charlotte half smiled, tears brimming. Yeah, I did. He hesitated. What now? She looked around the half-built barn. Now? We build? He swallowed hard. Together? She reached out, took his hand. Yeah, she whispered. Together. Part 7. The Real Wedding. 800 words. American English. Emotionally powerful, viral-style conclusion. The barn was half rebuilt. The roof still open to the sky, the walls half painted. But it stood strong, just like them. Charlotte walked barefoot across the soft grass in the backyard garden she once refused to step into. Today, she had daisies braided into her hair and dirt on the hem of her white cotton dress. A far cry from the designer gowns she used to demand. And yet, she had never felt more beautiful. The setting sun painted everything gold. There were no chandeliers, no symphony, just a string of bulbs Ethan had wired by hand, a few bales of hay for seeding, and mason jars filled with wildflowers. Martha baked a peach pie instead of a wedding cake, and the officiant, old Sheriff Tully, who cried before he even started the ceremony. Ethan stood under the arbor Charlotte had helped him build from salvaged wood. His shirt was crisp, but his boots were still worn. His hands, the same ones that had pulled her from a burning barn, were now holding a simple silver ring. The guests were few, just neighbors, folks who didn't care about stock portfolios or designer bags. People who'd seen them sweat, argue, stumble, rebuild. People who knew the truth. And Charlotte had never felt more surrounded by love. She took a deep breath, heart thudding, then looked Ethan in the eyes. I came here kicking and screaming, she began, voice shaking, with heels too high and a heart too closed. A soft laugh rippled through the crowd. She smiled through tears. But somewhere between falling in the mud and nearly burning down your barn, I found something I never expected. Freedom. Not from the world, but from myself. Ethan's lips twitched. I came here fighting, she continued. But I'm staying, with open arms. Silence. Then soft applause. And now it was Ethan's turn. He cleared his throat. I never wanted a wife, he said plainly. Laughter again. Even Charlotte chuckled. But every morning you didn't give up. Every time you fell and still came back out to help, you rewrote everything I thought I knew about love. He paused. Now I can't imagine a day without you. And then he slipped the ring onto her finger. Not a diamond, just silver. Simple, strong, real, like them. The kiss wasn't staged for cameras. It wasn't perfect, but it was everything. As the stars blinked on overhead and the music started, an old radio playing a country tune just a bit out of tune, Charlotte leaned into Ethan, barefoot and beaming. Kids ran around with jars catching fireflies. Martha handed out pie slices. The cows mooed in the distance, and for once, the quiet didn't make her restless. It made her whole. Later that night, when the guests had gone and the last lantern had burned out, Charlotte and Ethan lay on a blanket in the middle of the garden. He reached for her hand. You scared me, he whispered. She turned to him. When? When you stood up to your father. When you chose this life. She smiled. It wasn't a hard choice. Not after the fire. Not after you. He rolled onto his side, looking at her. This life isn't easy. Charlotte looked up at the stars. Neither was my old one. And in the silence that followed, something clicked. She hadn't just married Ethan. She had married herself, her new self, the version she was always meant to be. From heiress to farmer's wife, from spoiled to strong, from escape to belonging. And somewhere deep in Tennessee, beneath a sky filled with stars, a girl who once scoffed at the smell of hay fell asleep in the arms of the man who showed her what real love looked like. Not in diamonds or mansions, but in sweat, soil, and the sound of someone saying, "I'm not going anywhere." Sometimes, the life we think we want, full of wealth, status, and control, isn't the life we truly need. This story reminds us that real love, purpose, and growth are often found in the most unexpected places. Charlotte started off believing money could protect her from struggle. But it was the hard work, raw honesty, and genuine human connection she found on the farm that gave her strength, clarity, and real happiness. Her journey shows that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in courage, character, and the willingness to start over. No matter where you come from, or what you were taught to value, your story can change when your heart opens. What did this story teach you about love or life? Drop a comment, hit that subscribe button, and share this with someone who still believes money buys everything. They might just change their mind.